Hi everyone and welcome to the 2022 sea turtle nesting season. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm the director for Alabama Coastal Foundation's Share the Beach program. This video is going to act as a companion to our in-person meetings this year, either as a refresher or reminder, or for those people who were not able to attend in person. I'm going to go through details about our program, what we need from our volunteers, and how to register to become a volunteer. So sit back, enjoy, and thanks for watching.
Share the Beach is the sea turtle nest monitoring and conservation program for the state of Alabama. We monitor the entirety of Alabama's coastline, which equates to about 47 miles of beachfront property that goes from the Floribama in the east all the way to Dauphin Island in the west. Our active season is May 1st through October 31st. This covers active nesting, incubation, and hatching sea turtles for our area. As all sea turtle species are listed as endangered or threatened, we do operate under both state and federal permits from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to be able to do the work that we do. The objectives for Share the Beach are to mitigate human-related sea turtle mortality, especially those due to the effect of artificial light pollution on our beaches, by assisting sea turtle hatchlings to the Gulf through the presence of our volunteers, to monitor sea turtle nests and hatchlings along the Alabama Gulf Coast, and to promote the conservation of sea turtles in Alabama through public outreach and education. The last of which is really important. We do this, on and off throughout the season at nests as we're working things up, at community outreach, and things like that. So here we're going to talk about the expectations for our volunteers. The first thing we ask is that volunteers are able to dedicate a minimum of 2 hours a week, stretching up to 6 hours a week as we get later into the season, and we have both morning patrols and evening nest monitoring going on. An average patrol lasts about an hour, so most volunteers can do a couple of mornings a week, but even if you're only able to do one morning a week, that's still very helpful to us. We're usually off the beach between 6 and 6:30 in the morning, so that's usually enough time for everyone to get home and off to their work day if that's part of your schedule for the day. Nests, finding nests, processing nests, and relocations, if need be, can take longer. But if you are on a tight schedule that day, other volunteers will always show up and help with this, so don't ever feel like you are stuck on the beach longer than you're able to dedicate for that day. Honestly, any hour or two that we can get from our volunteers is very helpful to us. Beyond those morning patrols where we are finding crawls, we're identifying those, whether they're nests or false crawls, relocating if necessary, as I mentioned. We do monitor these nests all the way through incubation and until hatching time. Our volunteers document the hatching process and assist in counting hatchlings, documenting any disorientation that may occur in a hatching event, assisting those hatchlings or just monitoring those hatchlings to the water to make sure that they get there safely, and then excavating or doing a post-hatch assessment on all of our nests. We do follow all hatching and nesting protocols in coordination with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. We do also have other volunteer duties, such as participating in outreach events, camps, community events, merchandise sales, or things like that. So if you are not always able to get out onto the beach, we do typically have requests for outreach throughout the season that volunteers are also able to help with. And something else that I do like to point out about our program and our volunteers is that we really are a citizen science program, and our volunteers really are citizen scientists. We are out here gathering important data for helping the sea turtle species reach a recovery point where they're no longer listed as threatened or endangered. So this isn't, check an item off a bucket list program. This isn't a tourist viewing, fun, see the sea turtles kind of program. This really, truly is for those individuals who want to volunteer to truly help the species, from a scientific point of view. Sea turtle hatchlings do face a variety of challenges, The ones noted on this side are, of course, natural challenges from predators and environmental things that we are really not out to mitigate. Sometimes we mitigate these in a roundabout way, such as with foxes or other predators digging into the nests. We do cover those with a screen, so that is a means of natural mitigation. But for the most part, we do see natural predation and mortality from natural events, but we are out here to try to mitigate the human impact. The largest of these human-related impacts on our beaches are lights. You can see in these photos just the drastic effect that it has on the beaches at night. Sea turtles have adapted to nest in a completely dark beach environment. So lights from homes, condos, parking lots, and especially all those very bright flashlights on the beach at night with visitors out there pose a very big problem for our sea turtles who are not adapted to dealing with those bright light situations. They rely on the brightest light source to be the moon reflecting off of the water, or just the night sky reflecting off of the water to guide both the nesting females back to the water when they've finished, and also to guide hatchlings to the water as they emerge. So all of the white lights on the beach from human interference definitely causes an issue for our sea turtles, and that's a big thing that we are out there to work on. We do this through education. We do this through speaking with the public, both when we're at nests and they see us, and we have an opportunity to discuss things as they're happening, and also at other outreach events. You can also see in the lower photo that pier is lit up by more orange or amber lights, and that's one of the areas that have been retrofitted to be more sea turtle friendly. And so that would not disorient our sea turtles nearly as much as all of those other bright white lights out on the beach. And we also do have handheld red flashlights through ACF, through Maglite, that are available, that are tested by Fish and Wildlife Services as sea turtle friendly wavelengths that we would love to see out on the beach more. Another human-related impact that our sea turtles have to face is the presence of obstacles on the beach. And this is things like beach furniture, loungers, tents that are left overnight, toys, big floats, things like that, that we also work to educate people on. So the top photo, you can actually see the crawl where the turtle came and crawled between loungers and continued on her way. We have had sea turtles get stuck trying to go between loungers or under loungers, so that's certainly not ideal when they need to do that, and we don't even want that to pose a problem to begin with. And in the photo below where that sea turtle came up on the beach, noticed that tent and turned back, it probably looked like a very large, dark, imposing shadow in the middle of the night when that sea turtle came up onto the beach. And so when sea turtles encounter obstacles like that, it can often result in what's called a false crawl, where she came onto nest, got frightened by running into things or seeing too many large dark shapes on the beach, and turned around and went back to the water without nesting. And sea turtles do have a finite amount of time to nest once they're ready. So it is possible for them to come on the beach, get scared back into the water, and then drop their eggs in the water, which then makes them non-viable. So now I'll get into the specific ways that our volunteers work to help mitigate both those things and help the sea turtles. Doing this through patrolling, finding and marking nests, so that way we can monitor them and increase the success of our hatchlings, both surviving the incubation process and surviving the trek from the nest to the ocean. So the first thing we need to do, and we learn to do, is how to identify a sea turtle crawl. These are 4 different pictures, all sea turtle crawls. They have a very distinct pattern with that flat area in the center where their body dragged, along with those ripples on the outside where their flippers pulled them through the sand. The vast majority of our sea turtles that nest here are either loggerhead sea turtles, with the occasional Kemp's Ridley, and even more rare are green sea turtles nesting here. Both the loggerhead and Kemp's Ridley have what's called an alternating flipper pattern, so it gives it that wavy look that you can see in all of these pictures where those flipper marks are not directly across from each other. Our green sea turtle tracks are much more distinct. They have an even crawl pattern where those flippers are directly across from each other. It looks even more like a tire track that's, where the treads are hitting in the same place at the same time. But all of these you will come to be familiar with. First few patrols, when new volunteers find interesting footmarks or where equipment has been dragged through the sand, sometimes they can confuse that, get excited for finding their first crawl. But you'll learn as you go and practice with other volunteers that this is what we're looking for in those morning patrols. So as you can see in this top left photo of this slide, that's what a good nest area looks like. That's pretty much the ideal. Sometimes they're a little trickier to identify, but that's what a picture perfect nest would look like, with that really kind of blown out sand scattered everywhere, break in the crawl. And once we find one of those, you would contact your team leader, and then we all come out and mark that area. You can see in the second top photo there on the right where it's marked out very roughly with stakes. That's just so once we start digging, we don't lose our initial area and just dig way too wide. But we would begin digging in that area to locate the eggs. You can see in the lower left, our volunteers there digging. We dig very gently. We don't use any kind of tools so that there's no disturbing those eggs once we get down deeper. And then that last lower right photo, you can see the actual eggs in the nest. So once we have identified that, we would go ahead and cover those back up so as to not disturb them any more than necessary. Once we have confirmed that we have a nest, we mark them as you can see in this photo. So we put down a wire mesh screen, we call it a predator screen. The openings have been approved by Fish and Wildlife Service to be large enough for our hatchlings to escape through, should that need to happen. But it also keeps out predators from digging down into the nest, things like foxes and coyotes, even people sometimes, from getting down into those nests. And then we wrap it in bright green flagging tape so that everyone can see it, and we mark it with those bright yellow signs indicating that it is a sea turtle nest. That also details the fines involved with tampering with a sea turtle nest. So those are very clearly marked on all of our nests as well. Occasionally, a sea turtle won't come up high enough onto the beach before they decide to lay a nest. These, in this instance, when they are at or below the average daily high tide line, we will go ahead and relocate those. So this is to prevent any daily washover, which the eggs would not be able to survive that level of inundation on a daily basis. When we do need to relocate a nest, we would first dig a new nest chamber in an area that myself and our fish and wildlife biologist, Shannon Holbrook, would indicate, in a safe distance up the beach, but not too far from the original nest site. Dig that new nest chamber before removing any eggs from the original nest chamber. We would move those in a nice clean bucket with some damp sand, and then set them in their new nest chamber and mark it just as we do all of our other nests. Again, all of these details and trainings and protocols are detailed in our conservation manual that all new volunteers need to read, all volunteers need to read, and would be gone over in more thorough training in each team before the season starts. Once we have our nests and they're marked, we're watching those on basically a daily basis for any signs of vandalism or depredation, washover, additional sand getting blown onto it during heavy storms or things like that, until we get through incubation. The average incubation for a sea turtle nest is around 60 days, though it is both temperature and rain dependent. So when we have very, very rainy seasons, our nests do tend to incubate a little bit longer, and when we have very, very dry, hot seasons, our nests incubate a little faster. So beginning around day 50 to day 55, we begin monitoring those nests, usually on morning patrols, for signs of hatching. And we do this by checking the nest visually. We look for that indentation in the sand that you can see in the lower photo here, where it starts to cave in from those hatchlings emerging under the sand and starting to kind of dig and crawl up a little bit. We listen also for scratching sounds with a stethoscope, and that's something that trained volunteers will be able to do. New volunteers do have to go kind of through the process observing and learning before they're able to do that, and even knowing what to listen for. And then we also look for signs of increased predator interest. We will see increased ghost crab activity around a nest. We'll sometimes see increased fox tracks around a nest because those animals can also hear the hatchlings getting more active and moving under the sand. So once we kind of see all of these things, we know that our hatchlings are going to emerge soon. And then we want to set up volunteers to watch that. And that's kind of the icing on the cake for the season when we do get to catch one of those and watch our hatchlings emerge and make their way to the water. We're also out there to make sure that the hatchlings do go in the right direction because we do have a lot of artificial light on our beaches. And in the case of any disorientations that our hatchlings have, we do collect those in a bucket, hold them, and once the nest has kind of finished doing its things and we've collected all of our hatchlings, we release them closer to the water, but we still want to give them an opportunity to crawl across the sand. Following nest emergence, or on day 75 of incubation, if a nest is not hatched, we do a post-hatch assessment. On a nest that has hatched, this is done a minimum of 72 hours following the first hatchling emergence. So it's typically the following morning or afternoon of the 3-day mark. 72 hours exactly is usually late at night. We can't really do these very well in the dark. In order to do this, we dig up all of the nest contents, so that's any eggshells, any intact eggs. Sometimes we do find hatchlings, as you can see in this photo as well, that are still remaining in the nest. This was a rather large bunch of hatchlings, so this nest was really not quite finished, but in other situations, if we find this number of hatchlings, we would cover it back up and allow them to emerge naturally. The reason we do these post-hatch assessments is to determine the hatching success of the nest and record any important statistics for Fish and Wildlife Services to use in their data collection for the species recovery. So Share the Beach is broken down into teams to make manning different sections of the beach more manageable for our program. These are all of our teams listed here. 8 of those are completely covered under Share the Beach's permit, and then the Bon Secours National Wildlife Refuge does operate under their own permit as their own federal lands. Our Alabama Point team is our farthest east. It runs from the Floribama all the way to Perdido Pass, the east side of Perdido Pass, and that is managed by our team leader, Peggy Lively. Our Orange Beach team goes from the west side of Perdido Pass all the way to the start of the Gulf State Park, and that is managed by team leader Wendy Freiberger. The Gulf State Park team, as it indicates, covers the entirety of the Gulf State Park property, and that's managed by Joe and Denise Spafford. Our East Beach team runs from the Gulf State Park Pier all the way down to 6th Street, so that does pass things like the Hangout and other popular areas along there, and this team is managed by Rachel Holdsworth and Chandra Wright. Our West Beach team starts at 6th Street and runs west to Little Lagoon Pass and is managed by Des Steinla and Susan Stevenson. The Laguna Key team begins at Little Lagoon Pass and runs the rest of the way down Beach Boulevard until Beach Boulevard ends and it meets up with Bon Secours Wildlife Refuge. And this team is managed by Annie Godfrey and Krista Markham. The Bon Secours National Wildlife Refuge, as I mentioned, does function under its own permit, and that is managed by their refuge biologist, Jackie Sablon. The refuge is split into 2 parts. So you've got the far western tip of Fort Morgan, and then you also have on the eastern side, right where Beach Boulevard ends and runs for a few miles of refuge territory there. Our Fort Morgan's team area is sandwiched in between the 2 wildlife refuge areas. It runs basically the length of Fort Morgan Road, where Fort Morgan Road runs along the beachfront there. And that is managed by our team leaders, Debbie Harbin and Heather Poole. Our Dauphin Island team, as indicated in their name, manages the entirety of Dauphin Island. This is our largest team section, as they have the entire island to run. The majority of it is patrolled on foot, wherever it's developed areas of the island, basically from the eastern tip all the way until the West Beach, or the West End parking lot. The western end of the island is completely undeveloped, and it is patrolled. It's about 8.5 miles long, and it's patrolled by UTV. It's one of the only two sections, or one of the only two teams that run a UTV on a daily basis to cover their patrols. The other one is the Fort Morgan team. So if you are mobility restricted and cannot complete a normal walking patrol, you would inquire with the Dauphin Island or Fort Morgan teams about getting on their UTV patrols. Those are going to be more limited. A lot of people do want to ride on those, and so your patrols may not be as frequent as walking patrols. Now we get to the good part, how to sign up to become a volunteer. If you are a new volunteer, you're going to visit our website, www.joinacf.org. We will have a link there for the new volunteer registration form for you to use that. There will also be a link for a junior volunteer form. Junior volunteers are anyone under the age of 18 that would like to act as a volunteer, but they'll basically shadow their adult volunteer partner. They must sign up with an adult volunteer. So if you have, a child in your house or a grandchild who lives in the area, who's here throughout the summer and would participate with us. Temporary visiting grandchildren or things like that would not sign up as a junior volunteer. They would just be able to come and observe when they're visiting, but not take part in full volunteer duties. Return volunteers, you will receive a link from your team leader to the return volunteer form. We do keep that closed publicly because just confusion with other people finding it, clicking on it by accident. Once you have completed your volunteer form, you should make sure to read the Alabama Sea Turtle Conservation Manual. That is also linked on the website. This is required reading for all volunteers. It's going to detail all of our protocols, all of the ins and outs of what we do and why we do it. It really is so informative and so valuable for you to take the time to read it before you really get started with the program. It might even be a good idea to read it before signing up. You can still find the link to it on our website, and it may help you decide if this is a program that you would like to get involved in. Once you complete your volunteer commitment form, you will select the team that you want to join on. So any of those teams that I mentioned previously, you select the one. If you are a returning volunteer, you should select your current team, whatever you were on last year, unless you've made prior plans to move teams. And new volunteers, you would select the team that you'd like to join. If there are a few that you're willing to join, you can select multiple teams, and then you'll be assigned to the one that has space. Teams will start to close registration for their sections as they reach their quota of volunteers. So I wouldn't wait too long to get your signups in. You may lose out on a certain stretch that you might think is your ideal area to patrol. Most teams are accepting new volunteers. Only our Alabama Point is not accepting new volunteers on their team. They are full up, but all of our other teams are, though some of them are only accepting a select few. Once you complete all of that, you will receive a confirmation email. So if you don't receive a confirmation email, make sure that you completed your form. Or you can always email me to check on that and see if you did complete it. You'll get that confirmation email. That will have a link to go back and complete the $10 volunteer commitment fee. This is also a required portion of becoming a volunteer. This just helps offset, a lot of our operating costs as a, nonprofit organization doing what we need to do. Once you have completed all of that, you will just wait to hear from your team leader for whatever team you've been assigned to on next steps. And usually that'll be the training to get started with the season. They'll go more in depth over the things that we discussed through this today and give you a better idea of scheduling and when you'd be expected to be on the beach and things like that. There are also plenty of other ways you can support Share the Beach. If you are interested in doing any of these in addition to becoming a volunteer, that's wonderful. If you decide that volunteering with our program isn't for you, but you still want to help support our program, here are some great ways that you can do it. We do have nest adoptions and zone-sponsored adoptions available on our website under the donate portion of the page. This goes directly back into the Share the Beach program. And if you are a nest sponsor or a zone sponsor, you'll kind of get updates about that specific nest throughout this, as towards the end of its incubation. You can also become a member of ACF, Alabama Coastal Foundation, and that will support all of ACF's programs, including Share the Beach. If you have beachfront property, installing turtle-friendly lighting or window tinting to help cut down on the white light projecting out onto the beach is so helpful, whether that's, being part of your condo association and encouraging them to adopt a retrofit to change out any beach-facing lighting or beach-visible lighting, or even if it's a single-family dwelling that you have that you want to change out. We can also help you with next steps for starting that process. You can find our educational magnets, that's the left-hand photo there, or our beach yard signs on the right to post on your property. The signs are really great and eye-catching when you post them right at the end of your boardwalk or at the base of your stairs if you're on a beachfront property, and that way everyone can see those, or you can post them right inside your property for people to see, and those magnets work really well on the fridge as well. Both of those are available online in the ACF Shore Store. You can also support our license plate campaign. This is a big one that we've had going on for about 6 months now. We are trying to get a sea turtle license plate on the books for Alabama drivers. It's basically like a Kickstarter campaign. We are in the process of gathering enough support, or what the Revenue Department calls pre-commitments, where you go in, you put in your information, and you do pay the $50 specialty plate fee at that time, and it goes toward our goal of 1,000 pre-commitments in order to get this plate made. We need everyone's support for this to happen. You don't have to wait for it to be your normal registration time for your tag. You can do it at any time, and then once we reach our goal, those plates will go into production and be sent out to everyone who has already completed that pre-commitment form. You can share this with anyone else all across the state. So if you've got family or friends or business partners in more northern areas of the state that we may have a harder time reaching, please be sure to share that information with them so that more people know throughout the state that this plate is a possibility if we can get enough support for it. The link to the pre-commitment form is also on our website right on the ACF homepage, so it's easy to find to get that completed as well. I'd like to thank you for attending, for watching this video, for your support of our program, and your interest in joining our program. I hope you have learned everything you need in order to make a decision to become a volunteer or not, or support us in other ways. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me. My name again is Sarah Johnson, and my email is sjohnson@joinacf.org. Thank you so much.